Welcome to the Sarpy County Board of Equalization meeting. It is,
Still gonna call them out.
I don't think I'll ever use that, Deb.
Can you whistle?
Today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2023. It's 3:00 p.m. and we'll call the Board of Equalization meeting to order. You'll have to hit that because that's not my style.
Do it, Angie, do it. You're good.
We have present in the boardroom today Commissioners Kelly, Commissioner Klug, Commissioner Warren, and Commissioner Burmeister, along with the County Administrator Dan Hoynes and the County Clerk Deb Hotaling. Please silence your cell phones. The Open Meetings Act is on the back wall of the county boardroom, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4 is the consent equalization agenda. Item 4.1 are the minutes.
Motion to approve? Second.
It's moved by Commissioner Klug and seconded by Commissioner Warren to approve. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
All agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Equalization is adjourned.
Okay.
Welcome to the Sarpy County Board of Commissioners meeting. It is Tuesday, January 31st, 2023 at 3:02 p.m. We have present today Commissioners Warren, Kelly, Klug, and Burmeister, along with the County Administrator Dan Hoynes and the County Clerk Deb Hotaling. The first item on the agenda is awards, proclamations, and presentations. We have 3.1 employee recognition years of service presentation for calendar year 2022, quarters 3 and 4. Dan Hoynes, County Administrator.
Can you hear me okay? We're good? Okay. Mobile mics, that's a good thing, so. Thank you all for coming today, Madam Chair, members of the board. We're combining a couple of different employee recognition awards simply because of some timing issues. Always try to look at something a little bit more unique or different to recognize the people that work here. And so as I'm reading through the files here, we have 280 years of public service being recognized today for 15 different people. That's pretty amazing. Almost 3 centuries of public service from 15 people. If you do the math, Bill, I use my calculator. If you don't have to breathe into a paper bag, that's 18.6 years they've averaged per employee. Ranges from 10 years to 40 years of service in county government today, those 15 people. One thing that stuck out was the diversity in this group. It's really amazing. So, and again, just globally, and I'll miss some because some people are pretty good at kind of burying their stuff, especially the law enforcement officers trying to dig up stuff you can talk about here. They're pretty close, but I have some sources, so I was able to get some stuff. But some of these skills from this diverse group, there's degrees in education, in ministry, social work, leadership, real estate, criminal justice, just a sampling. Some of the specialized skills in this group: operations certifications in heavy equipment, CDL license, search and rescue, firearms, hostage negotiations, accident reconstructions, EMTs, and we have a hockey player in the group that is going to come up today. There's also a category I identified as community involvement. I have to qualify this one, I will when I get to the individual, but minister in 9 cities over a 30-year period. Works for county government right now. There's volunteer service, Lift Up Sarpy, volunteer fire departments, and involvement in several local churches and ministries throughout when you look through there. So it really is about public service. You look, I always find it more interesting. I have a pretty good idea just by job title what these folks do in terms of glad I silenced my phone because it's ringing right now. I digress. Because I see the job description. But, you know, to find out what they do after 5 o'clock is always, I think, valuable for me. So when I call your name up, if your department head could come up, Mary will stand here. And Mary, if you could, not only with your buffaloes, if you could help me hand out our challenge coin, and I'll give the typical Chairman Kelly, you have to carry this all the time. So I don't have to do it 15 times today. Is that good enough, Don? It's good. It's good. Right. Kyla, Frederick, you could come up, and if Ryan could come up with you. A little bit about Kyla. I think I'm throwing some audio visuals up here. You got that up there? Because not everybody shows up, but I'm still going to show their face and recognize them even if they're not there.
I don't think she's a hockey player.
Yeah, you don't think? You're right, Ryan. Anyway, Kyla, 10 years, right? Administrative Service Manager. So anybody that knows what that title entails, I can reduce it. She runs the place. In there. We all depend. I know if Ryan depends on you as much as the rest of us do. Kyla, he couldn't do it without you. She says that she's one of them with a teaching degree. Kyla in here. And Mary, she worked at a national staffing company. If you're ever looking to recruit some stuff in here, as I dug through there. And something unique about, I think you like dogs, right? Yeah. You're French bulldog? Yeah. Yep. All right. So you should hide your Facebook page a little bit more. I'm going to do that. So let's give Kyla a hand for her service. Thank you. While Kyla's making her way back, Megan Jacobson, are you here? If you could take your Fitbit off or your step counter and come on up here with Jake. Megan was, I think, second place in the step challenge last October in there, but certainly ahead of myself and Chairman Kelly. Megan has been here 10 years. Her current title is Community Corrections Supervisor. And the thing I really found unique about Megan, she has 3 college degrees from Iowa Western, from Dana, and from UNO. And again, currently serving as Community Corrections Supervisor. So thank you, Megan. Appreciate everything you've done. So the next one's a little bit of a disclaimer. Dwayne Kennedy, he's not here, and I'll explain why not. Dwayne is the individual I referenced earlier that has served as a minister in 9 different cities over a period of 30 years. Currently works in the county assessor's office. He has 2 bachelor's degrees, Purdue University, organizational leadership, Hardman University Bible, and also a MA in ministry from the same Hardman University in Tennessee, graduate of Randall School of Real Estate. And he's not here today, and this is just indicative of the effort. She called HR about an hour ago, 2 hours ago maybe, late this afternoon. Said that he computed that he had a slight break in service, and so he didn't feel ethically he could be here with everybody else to be awarded for his years of service because we counted that. And so I told Mary, heck, I'm still going to recognize him, and we'll do it again next year. So let's give him a hand anyway, even though he's not here. County Treasurer Shelley Wentworth. Is Shelley here? All right, Trace will come up and stand her instead. So Shelley has been for 20 years in the Title Specialist Treasurer's Office. And Trace, do you have any stories you want to tell about Shelley? Or?
Sure.
Go for it.
You know, I actually knew Shelley before I came to the treasurer's office when I worked in the veterans office, and even prior to that, not on a personal level or anything, but as a customer. And for some reason, every year when I would come in, I always got Shelley. And the one thing I knew when I went into the treasurer's office of the caliber of people that work in there is because every time I talked to Shelley, she made my day better. And that's every time you talk to her, even to this day, every day when I go and see her at work, every time I talk to her, I feel better. She's just very bubbly, very positive, and she's just a great asset to our office, and I love her to death. I'm glad she works in there.
Let's give her a hand. Well, thank you, Trace. You can take over the MC duties for employee recognition from this point forward. So great job. Next one is really unique to me, and I'll explain why. Julie Krause District Court. Julie, you here today? And Judge Martinez. So as Julie's making her way up here, I'll tell you the uniqueness of it for Julie is Julie and I grew up in the same small town, Dessler, Nebraska, a town of about 6 if you come over here, Judge and Julie. And of course, we knew each other because we're the same generation, Julie and I. And then I knew her husband, Levi, who recently retired as a game warden. And Levi was actually in law enforcement a little bit ahead of me, so I'd known their family for a lot of years in this really small town connection in Nebraska. But it even became more unique to me. Gosh, a couple months ago, I was at some chamber event, sitting at a table like we all do, interacting, young man sitting there, and he said, I asked him, I said, so where'd you grow up? He said, oh, some small town, you wouldn't know where it's at. So well, give me a try. And he says, Dessler, Nebraska. Do we have the dragon queued yet? Up here. And the map of where this is at, about 3 hours away from, I just find it so unique that 3 people from this very small town, like 25 people in my graduating class. I don't know how many you had. 21. Okay, so yeah. But I want to, Madam Chair and Board, I do want to take leave and personally, I want to get a picture of Tyler Lundry. If you could come up, Tyler. Tyler's the other Dragon graduate. And so I want to, there's this website that's called You Know You're From Dessler When. And so I'd like to get a picture of the 3 dragons, and I'm going to post it up later. So let's first give Julie, recognize her service. And then if you don't mind, Julie, if you could entertain me while we'll take our dragon picture. If you could get the dragon in there too, that'd be good. Come on, Pat. Right here.
Oh, there's the.
You can stand right here.
Are you talking?
Go Dragons.
Want me to send you?
They still have their own school. It's 6-man football now, but they still have it. So, facilities management, James Katusin. James, are you here? James isn't here. All right, you want to come? I'll let you talk about James then, Brian. We'll check your extemporaneous speaking here. But James, let's give him a hand. 40 years, folks. Facilities management. So let's give him a hand, and I'll let Brian talk about it.
Thank you, Dan. For those of you that know Jim, he's a honest, modest, extremely outspoken guy, but he's been here since 1982. Saw everything around here and throughout the county when it was a fraction of what it was. We wouldn't be the same department without all the knowledge that he brings to us and that he reminds us of. And he's the one person that we were able to find that touched the time capsule on the west side of the building, but still didn't know where it was. And it wasn't for lack of trying, but still didn't turn up. Thanks from Jim.
Thank you, Brian. Give him a hand. All right, I'm feeling some pressure on my MC duties there, so I might not get the mic over anymore. So anyway, thanks, Brian. JJC, Mark Beals, 20 years. Tammy, saw you here, or Sheriff, both? So Mark is one of those that has a pretty hidden internet profile. So Tammy, I'm going to have you do the honors here and tell the group a little bit about Mark, okay? You don't mind.
I don't mind. So, fun fact, I've known Mark for 34 years, which is funny because I'm only 35. But Mark and I first worked together at Sears Service Center when I was only 17, and Mark had a lot of hair. And we have pictures of that too. So, not up here though, sorry. I didn't think about getting those to Dan. But Mark has just been an integral part of the Juvenile Justice Center, worked for many years on the CARE program, and that's where a lot of people actually knew him for, was the CARE program, our house arrest program. He was recently transferred about a year ago to our housing area, which I know he was kicking and screaming, but he has just done a fantastic job, and I think has really found his niche in that area. So can't thank Mark enough for his years of service. He's got a wonderful family. His wife is a school teacher and 2 wonderful kids. So just want to thank Mark for his many years of service at the Juvenile Justice Center, 20 years. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
So our next employee to recognize, Kelly Jack, Planning Department. Kelly, you here today?
Yeah.
All right, you and Don come up. So Kelly's making her way up here. Originally met Kelly when I was working for the city of Papillion on a development proposal, and then have just come to really appreciate her over the time. Oftentimes, she's the first one in, the last one out, and just always a pleasant human. She was promoted recently, 2022, to planning coordinator with the planning department, 5/8 of 2022, a little less than a year ago. And Kelly, you know your application's still on file. Did you know that? Your original one with the county 10 years ago. Yeah, so I was reading through it, and I had to chuckle. Kelly's husband, Rod's a very reputable, great builder here at Sarpy, and she put that she had worked for his company as an accountant for 20 years for zero pay. So, and she had other jobs at the same time too. But yeah, I'm kidding. But I thought, maybe you ought to talk to a lawyer about that in there. But anyway, thank you, Kelly. 10 years. Public Works, I saw Dr. Wilson here. Two people being recognized. Nicholas Bryant. Is Nicholas here by chance? Or?
Jim was not here, and Nick couldn't make it either.
Okay, well, 20 years and 20 years, right? One heavy equipment operator, the other highway maintenance. So come tell us about your employees.
You bet. Well, from the standpoint of Nick, he's been with us for 20 years. Nick has always enjoyed going into the plow business. He likes to take the trucks out at any time he can. And he's one of those people in our organization that will take an answer at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, whatever it takes to come out and do the plowing. He's just one of those guys that always shows up. He's kind of a legacy. His father, Joe, passed away not too long ago, but he was working for our mechanic shop for, I think it was 25 years at that point in time, before taking retirement. And he also has a brother named TJ, and he really doesn't care if he has to work with TJ at all. He likes to stay away from that part. Jim Martin, recent guy, as far as I'm concerned, we don't often get to see our field people very often at all. And the reason for that is they like to do solitary things and work with their crews, but getting them out to these events like this, they're scared to death of it. They seriously are. So we've had to drag most of them on occasion. Jim just recently became a foreman for our department. And again, that's because of his dedication to doing the same thing, getting out whenever they have to get out. And of course, the other thing I forgot to mention is these people are the ones who took care of the flood, and they also took care of the tornadoes when we had them back in those respective years. So I'd really like to congratulate them. You'll have to tell them next time you see them, even though you won't recognize them, that
We got a picture up there. One of them, I think so.
yeah. See, I told you, Nick wouldn't want to get in front of a camera either, so. But if you happen to see any of our crews, I always tell people, just give them a welcome and a pat on the back. They work the most horrible hours in the most worst conditions, so. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. And I think this is actually recorded, is it, Madam Clerk? Or you can send them a link to the comments
Yes.
at some point here when it gets up. So pass on appreciation from the board. All right, well, maybe a transcript. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. So Sheriff Davis making his way up, and if you don't mind, Sheriff, you've got, I think, the next 3 or 4. So I'll call them up individually, talk about them individually, and then if, what's that?
Only one of them, sir.
All right, well, I'll call them off and talk about them just briefly. Jason Miller, 10 years, deputy sheriff, currently works in jail road patrol and is currently assigned to Support Services Division Civil Process Research Paper. Jason previously works in Cass County. I was going to go, well, you should watch that, shouldn't you? But inside joke, I worked at Cass County too. So Jason is on the bike patrol, maintains all the sheriff's office bikes. He's a member of the search and rescue team and is a firearms instructor. And I can tell you that many skills in one person is a very valuable person to the organization. Jason's our hockey player. too, so. Kyle Bursfield. Kyle's a sergeant currently, I think he was promoted in 2017. Crisis Negotiation Unit, Crash Response Unit, Bike Team, Field Training Officer, Supervisor, currently works day shift, Road Patrol Supervisor. He's involved member of Reality Church in Sarpy County, and he serves on the Lift Up Sarpy board. So Kyle's not here, right? Bradley Victor? Okay, Bradley, you're making your way up here. Also rank of Deputy Sheriff. Brad works in the jail, Road Patrol, or has worked in the jail, Road Patrol, and currently assigned to the courthouse. Brad is an instructor for CPR, Pepperball, TACMed, and is on the Rapid Deployment Force team. Brad has his EMT license and is also an active member of the Tabor Volunteer Fire Department.
Bradley, how many times have you received a life-saving award? 4 times. 4 times, and he hasn't been here that long, so he's been in the right place at the right time. Something like that ever happens to me, I hope he's standing next to me. That's all I can tell you.
Let's get Bradley around here. Actually, one of our employees being recognized is post-retirement. Jackie Yost, many of us know her and worked with her. Jackie worked here for 30 years. She recently retired, just in 2023, Sheriff, or just this year? Okay. She didn't want to come back, by the way. She could mail herself. But Jackie was instrumental in implementing and maintaining the records management system, payroll programs throughout the years to include LRMS, OSL, and ProPhoenix, and that's all really hard computer stuff. The last one for the sheriff, Melanie, is it Melissa? Okay, Melissa Zelensky? Zelazny. Dang, I even tried to get it right. She's currently the administrative coordinator in civil process and started Trace in the treasurer's office and license plate renewal in there. And so anything to add on any of these, Sheriff? Or?
Just that Jackie Yost recently did retire. I spoke to her today. When she was here, she was a very, very valuable employee, as all these employees are, but she'll be deeply missed. So I think we just had a retirement party here about a week ago. Great gal. So anyway, thank you all.
Let's give a round of applause for all the sheriffs who missed that. But thank you, Sheriff, and everybody for coming to support that.
Item number 4 is Commissioner Administrator announcements and comments. We'll start with Commissioner Kelly.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Nothing, thank you.
I just wanted to thank, I know there's still some law enforcement people in the room. There was an incident in West Omaha today that law enforcement went in and neutralized in a shooting incident, and I'm thankful for the people that were there as well as all the law enforcement people in Sarpy. Thank you.
Dan.
Nothing, madam.
Moving on to the consent commissioners agenda. Anyone want to see anything removed from the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Move to approve by Commissioner Warren, seconded by Commissioner Klug. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
Item 6.1 is a public hearing and recommendation to the Liquor Control Commission for Cross Drain Brewing. Cross Drain Brewing has applied for a catering endorsement to their existing Class C liquor license for business at 10411 Portal Road, Suite 102, La Vista, Nebraska 68128. Scott Strain applicant.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't have too much to say. This is an addition to our liquor license. Allows us to get more than 6 SDLs for special events in the area. Most of them will actually probably be in the Omaha area. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions, Mr. Strain?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Move to approve by Commissioner Klug, seconded by Commissioner Warren. Any? Oh, yeah. Thank you. It's a public hearing. Does anybody, a member of the public, wish to speak on this application? I'll close the public hearing.
There you go.
And it was moved by Commissioner Klug and seconded by Commissioner Warren to approve. Any discussion?
No, just simply keep the fairy nectar flowing.
We try our best, thank you.
Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, Resolution 2023-030, opposition of certain Nebraska legislative bills for the 2023 session. So we, this year, have a new committee, the Legislative Coordination Committee, that's trying to get a little better organized on our legislative initiatives. We're taking hopefully 2 steps forward and only 1 step back on that committee, but we're getting there. Takes a little organization to get things together, particularly with over 800 bills coming out all at the same time in the legislature. So we're working on being a little more proactive and a little more collaborative within Sarpy County on the legislative initiatives. So this first set are a set of bills that the Legislative Coordination Committee has recommended that the board oppose based on their impact to the county. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that
Are we
motion.
gonna show
Do you want to go through them? They're on
No,
the
I'm
agenda.
just curious,
Sure.
in case anyone was interested. It's in the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
No,
it's
that's fine,
posted.
that's good enough then.
I'll second.
I'll make a, did you motion?
Yeah, I made the
Okay.
motion.
It was moved by Commissioner Warren and seconded by Commissioner Klug to support the resolution opposing those particular bills. Any discussion?
The only discussion is we're going to continue to follow those, and as things continue to cycle, we may go back and forth depending on how the bills end up. But I think we've done a fairly good job of sorting out most of them at this point.
And typically, we take positions only on bills that really have an effect in the county. In this particular case, we have 3 bills that are being opposed. LB 209 has to do with data centers and has a massive fiscal impact to the county. LB 325 expands county liability for tort claims, also a huge fiscal impact. And LB 49 has to do with regulations on solar and wind energy and restricting that ability. Any other comments? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
Item 6.3 is Resolution 2023-029, support of Nebraska legislative bills for the 2023 session. So this list of bills are the list of bills that are recommended for support. We've listed out a few priority bills, and then there's about 11 bills here altogether that are supportive for a variety of reasons. Just covering quickly the priority bills, LB4 is a bill that the board brought to Senator Sanders actually last year to support disabled veterans with the homestead application. We worked with the assessor's office and put that bill together in a collaborative way to try to be good about helping our veterans. It didn't made it out of committee last year, but ran out of time. So we had a hearing on that bill last week in the Revenue Committee, and that hearing went very well. So we're hopeful that that bill will pass this year. LB 769 is a bill also brought by the sewer agency having to do with the expansion of the sewer. And LR1CA is a constitutional amendment brought by Senator Blood to get rid of unfunded mandates. So those are the priority bills, and then there are a list of several more that are listed as bills that we as a county recommend support of.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Warren and seconded by Commissioner Klug to support the list of support bills. Any discussion? Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
Item 7.1, discussion and presentation, Western Sarpy Interstate 80 Planning and Environmental Linkages Pell update, and next steps, Scott Bovick, Deputy Administrator, Mike Helgerson, Executive Director from MAPPA.
Well, I thought Scott was going to take over.
I know they could pass for brothers, couldn't they? So.
Very good here. Okay, well, I am going to pull this up. So will this be able to be shown? Excellent. Well, thank you, and really thank you to Dan and Scott for allowing me to come and talk a little bit today about the study that MAP has been leading here over the last couple of years related to the planning for a new interchange in Western Sarpy County. And so I'm going to give you some high-level sort of thoughts on how we did the process, what we learned, and really what's coming next. And there's a lot on this slide. There's a lot in the report. I'm not going to drag you through all the details. If you have any questions, we'll hopefully have some time at the end to go through all of those. So first of all, we're using this acronym PEL, Planning and Environmental Linkages, and I think it's important to kind of start with a definition of why we did this process. So with something like an interchange that's going to be occurring on the interstate highway system, that'll likely be using federal funds, and because it's impacting the interstate, it's going to have to go through the federal aid process, including coordination with NDOT, including coordination with FHWA. And so what a planning study like this does is it allows us to do work at the planning level where we're thinking big, where we're asking kind of more general questions, we're coordinating on a more informal basis with stakeholders, residents, to allow that work to be carried forward into the more restrictive NEPA process or environmental process that happens later. And so the benefits of this kind of study is it does provide a little bit more flexibility in terms of how we approach those questions, the type of engagement that we can do, and not having it be so deliberative, not being sort of the notice that comes through the mail, but having more community conversations about what we're trying to accomplish. And so what we really wanted to do through this study is first develop what's called the purpose and need. That's kind of the definition of a project in terms of federal funding. We wanted to do some alternatives development, thinking about what the range of possibilities were, and then use some of the data that we have available to us to screen those alternatives so we're not carrying forward every potential option into that environmental process, but really trying to find out what things are reasonable and unreasonable. And so with that, this graphic just kind of illustrates a little bit more about what that process is. Where we are today is kind of right up to that blue line, kind of having gone through that initial level of screening. And I'll talk a little bit about what we did through the study process. And we're really kind of standing on the next phase of the project, which would be entering into that environmental decision-making process, that NEPA process in the future. So just a little bit of background on the study. We started it around the summer of 2020. We did some initial public involvement, kind of thinking about what the goals of this type of investment would be, what we wanted to accomplish, not just with an interchange, but to support the growth and development of Sarpy County more generally. Last year, kind of 2021 and 2022, we really dove into taking all of the alternatives that we developed early on, starting to develop those screening criteria, and going through the process of prioritizing those as well. So then since the summer of last year, we've been really trying to pull all the documentation together to make sure that the report that we have is comprehensive and that FHWA, our federal partner, will sort of document that we've gone through this process appropriately and that the work can be carried forward into the NEPA process. So one piece of context, MAPPA, about 5 years ago, we coordinated with the Nebraska Department of Transportation to complete the Metro Travel Improvement Study. And this study was really looking at the entire interstate system in Douglas and Sarpy County and thinking about the long-term needs, not just from a capacity standpoint, but maintenance, where things needed to change about the system. And one of the key pieces of that at the end was a memo specific to Sarpy County and the discussion of a new interchange. And so with that, what we identified was that there would need to be improvements both at N370 at the existing interchange and at Highway 31, and that those improvements on their own would not basically allow traffic to flow freely at peak hours, both today and into the future. And so that documented need of both a need today and as growth and development happens at those existing interchange or around those existing interchanges, that there is this need for some improvement, either different types of project or different improvements, but also that additional access on the interchange might be a solution to those problems as well. And so within the context of this, we used a lot of data to help support how we did this process. A lot of it goes back to kind of these two key measures here, one being vehicle miles traveled, and overall having a reduction in vehicle miles traveled for the region is one of our long-term goals, as well as vehicle hours traveled. So that's the time people spend in their vehicles. I'll touch on that a little bit more about how that interacted with this study. These are goals that we have at the regional level, and we use those as a framework for evaluating alternatives through this study as well. So getting into kind of the overall process, we started out with really almost a whiteboard in terms of working with our community stakeholders, the steering committee of communities, Gretna, Papillion, Sarpy County were all financial contributors to the study. They were all members of our steering committee. We also had a community advisory group that was much broader, had private landowners, folks from economic development, and a broad range of perspectives to help us understand what this type of project means. And they all provided input on this sort of speculatory phase of what might we do, where might we invest in the transportation system. Ultimately, we're screening out alternatives. We're looking for things that are investments within this corridor. So the banded area that you see here is really where we were looking for potential projects like an interchange. And so within that frame, we ended up identifying 6 potential interchange locations that we evaluated in detail. We actually evaluated each of these independently and looked at the networks that would be required to connect to these locations. So you see them on the map and listed to the side there. So 168th and Schramm, 180th Street, 192nd in Capehart, 204th in Fairview, as well as alignments at Platteview Road and Fluke Road. So these were kind of the build alternatives that we had for a new interchange. We also carried forward alternatives for N31, so basically taking improvements to the existing interchange at Highway 31 and also at Highway 370 as well. So 8 kind of total alternatives to evaluate through this lens of what we call purpose and need. So as we started to look at what we termed the performance criteria, looking at traffic volumes, looking at delay, looking at travel times for people, one of the things that we characterized is what's the potential for traffic volumes at these locations. So again, these were tested all independently, but you see the highest traffic volumes at the locations at 192nd in Capehart and 168th in Schramm. Kind of the next grouping would be those locations at 204th in Fairview and 180th Street. And then kind of a lower tier of sort of traffic volume and really kind of a demand for an interchange at that location at Platteview and Fluke Road. And so these are 2050 volumes. So this is kind of using the land use forecast that we developed with the communities, kind of merging and aligning the comprehensive plans for the communities, the growth in population and employment that we're anticipating, and using our travel demand model to forecast what the traffic might look like in the future based on that land use scenario. So these performance criteria are one of the ways that we evaluated each of these interchange locations. But we also did what we called acceptance criteria, kind of thinking about what are the other benefits of having a new interchange location and the connectivity related to that. We looked at acceptance criteria around things like environmental impacts, economic growth, kind of economic impact, kind of directly. Looked at things like, does it offer barrier breaking for multimodal transportation, in addition to other factors like, does it benefit communities equally, or does it benefit one community, multiple communities, and things like that. And so we did this both through our community advisory group, our steering committee, as well as public outreach last year to really kind of think about these different alternatives and what was preferred. So with that input, we were able to basically plot each of the alternatives based on both those acceptance criteria here on the vertical axis and the performance criteria along the bottom axis. So the upper right is where both acceptance and performance was high, and you see that 192nd and Capehart both had the highest performance in terms of sort of the traffic volumes and the transportation metrics that we were looking at, in addition to the most public support and stakeholder support as well. Second to that was 168th and Schramm, and really kind of depending on how that engineering process develops over the course of NEPA, there is the potential that that project could be mitigated in different ways to address some of the comments and the questions of the public in that. The remaining ones were found to be kind of lower overall in terms of either performance or acceptance and not kind of falling into that upper right quadrant. So this is just kind of a useful visualization of some of the work that followed as we got into the screening process. And finally, we had this unreasonableness definition that we get from NDOT and how they coordinate with FHWA. And you see a number of factors there on the right-hand side about what we're looking at, what we're talking about when we mean unreasonable. Some of it can be utility impacts, major impacts to kind of existing businesses, duplication. Does it, not do something that's independent, but something that mirrors another existing facility? And then also, does it kind of meet some of these thresholds we said about the performance and the traffic volume? And you'll see that right-hand column of the table shows that we found we found only 2 alternatives to be reasonable. And really, this is kind of the outcome of this planning process, is that these 2 reasonable alternatives are being carried forward into the NEPA process that'll begin after this study. And so those 4 were found to be unreasonable based on kind of a matrix of the different things there. You see some didn't have the appropriate traffic volume, some had community impacts, environmental impacts, and other factors that we didn't believe could be mitigated through the environmental review and coordination process. So that's summarizing, a 2.5-year study in a very short amount of time. But the final report was distributed to FHWA and NDOT last month. And so the final report documents kind of everything I've talked about today, how we developed the purpose and need, the results of those public outreach activities, the land use scenario that was coordinated and kind of brought comprehensive plans into alignment and allowed us to really kind of think about what the opportunity was around the interchange location to support economic growth and really kind of almost have more coordinated planning around that. And then in addition to both the alternatives development and screening process, it's lengthy, it's dense, but it's part of that documentation that we talk about, really documenting the process so that the work can be carried forward and really reduce the duplication of effort in that NEPA process to follow. So getting into the next steps, we submitted the report back in December. It is January 2023, so I say study completion and publication. We are waiting on our letter from FHWA, and I held out hope, and this was me speaking it into existence that we'd have that letter in hand by FHWA today. We don't have it today. So that'll slide into February most likely. They said this week. It is Tuesday, and we still don't have it. So to that note, we are kind of at the goal line of having the report documented and assembled. That letter from FHWA will really kind of assent to what we did in the process, how it aligns with sort of the PEL guidance, and really what can be carried forward into that NEPA process going forward. So with that, we'll be closing out our contract with our consultant Benish on this particular project, and then really working closely with NDOT on the next steps of this project. Because it's an interchange, because it impacts the interstate, NDOT will have really a leadership role in the engineering process, the environmental review, and the what's called the interchange justification report, basically a request to the federal government to change something about the interstate highway system. They manage the interstate highway system as a national resource, so when you add or remove an interchange, you need to request that from the federal government to approve that. So there's a lot more engineering that has to go into all of these alternatives. There's a lot more coordination with local jurisdictions about how we get to this, but we're really happy with the overall outcome of this. There was some question in the middle of this study of whether we'd be able to screen out any alternatives based on the guidance from NDOT and FHWA, and so we're very happy that we were able to come up with a framework that allowed us to utilize the input from our community partners and the public to help us kind of narrow down where we want to invest resources going forward in this effort. And so with that, worked very closely with Denny and Scott and Jason on this study, and really grateful for their time in really inputting a lot of meetings, a lot of conversation, a lot of help in guiding us and our consultant team in this effort. So thanks to them. And really, this is the starting line for implementation. We see opportunities here with this next transportation improvement program that we put together at the regional level to make sure that NDOT is moving this project forward, whether in the next fiscal year or having a plan. And local leaders like yourselves will be important in that conversation as well. And Sarpy County already submitted a letter of support for this study. We included that in our providing of the report to NDOT and FHWA, and we're appreciative of the board's support for the study in its current form. And now I'm happy to answer any questions. Really wanted to just kind of give you a high-level overview of the process, where it's taken us, and where we go from here. But if there's any specific questions, happy to answer them.
Questions for Mike?
No, I was able to sit on Mike's board through most of this stuff, and you got a feel of all the acronyms. I mean, MAPPA is a master at acronyms, and yeah, and so I kind of got a good feel for that over the last couple of years to actually understand what goes on. But we're very thankful for your work on this. Thank you.
So on slide 4, now you got a nice graphic there. Shows alternative evaluation and screening for the PEL. It kind of leads one to believe that the majority of the work is done. That's not the case, is that correct?
That's not the case, no. And so each of those alternatives, there's going to be what they call an alternatives analysis for each of those alternatives. So if you go into the engineering process and they start actually drawing up the land, thinking about how much, what the cost is going to be, how reasonable, how technically feasible it is once the engineers start digging into it, there's going to be a lot of other questions to be answered, a lot more documentation on once they're actually saying how much dirt they're turning, is it going to impact wetlands, and when the actual footprint of the project is developed. At a planning study, we're kind of looking 30,000 feet. We're drawing lines on a map. We're saying we can likely see where some of these impacts might be. But when you get into the engineering process and it's real, you're talking about what you're impacting. There's more surveys that are done, both like on the archaeological side and on the wetlands side. It's more of a deliberative process, step by step, talking to impacted landowners, notifying them of their rights and things like that. So there's a lot more of a deliberative process once the lines become more real and that design process starts.
So how much did the Pell cost?
It was about $350,000 total.
Okay, and how much will the NEPA process cost?
That's a good question. I don't have good numbers on that, particularly for a project led by the state of Nebraska. They have some efficiencies because they are both the project sponsor and the people who will review it. I'm not 100% sure. I would say it's probably more than what it costs to do the PEL, probably $500,000 to $1 million if I had to put a number to it.
Any estimate on a time?
At least a couple of years. That's what we've seen on the NEPA process, kind of best case scenario. Again, NDOT has a lot of efficiencies that they can realize, but it really depends on when they start. So if they don't start until October of this year, that clock starts then.
Okay, on slide 10, on your interchange volume performance, I guess that's what rolls up into performance.
Yep.
Was any consideration given to the lake that's being proposed? Because I just can't believe that you'd have 5,200 cars at Flug Road if there was a major Okoboji-sized lake being constructed.
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense to me.
And that's a very good point. I will say you are all very busy in Sarpy County, and for the purposes of this study, we did have to draw a line. And so pretty much the second we drew a line at when that land use scenario was going to be finalized and having all those traffic reports came out, the Star Wars project announced that lake project. So that's not reflected in here. And that's part of why we've documented what we've known to date. The work's going to be carried forward and really kind of the assumptions about that. There will have to be more traffic engineering on that side reflecting that as well. And so, I think as the legislature sort of makes that more clear about exactly the timing of when that is, we can use that to adjust these forecasts as well. But no, we did not include that in here at this time based on the timing of when that report was released.
Okay, and then I guess the reason I bring that up is because I just saw a study on Plabby Road that shows a future road coming out at Flug Road, and it's in the lower left quadrant. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, oh, okay, now there's a disconnect here. So it makes sense to me if there's a lake down there that you'd want an interchange there. But if there's not going to be a lake down there, then it makes a lot of sense to go to 192nd Capar. But we need to make a decision here pretty quick so we can start acquiring right-of-way and corridor protection and before the ship sails and, leaves port. And so not your issue, obviously, but certainly the issue of this board is we need to put a marker down and we need to go. And this study helps solidify that. I mean, this came up last week or a couple of weeks ago, and but this is just another data point of concern for me that we need to pick an interchange, and it sure looks like 192nd Capart, and we need to do all our planning actions so that everything we're doing on a road corridor complements what's being done on this Pell and the NEPA study. So that's a concern, I think, that we need to work through. Appreciate your staff doing all this work. It's kind of like herding cats, isn't it?
Well, like I said, the busyness of Sarpy County, if we were doing this in a county that didn't have all the growth and development in it that you have, it would have been a lot easier. Just that the moving target of what's getting built and when and the advancement of projects and all of that, it's really a testament to the need for the interchange in and of itself. Now, the feds didn't buy that, and so we had to document it in other ways, but it became very difficult not to show that the need was not just in the future, but today. And so for us, it was a privilege to do this study on behalf of the communities in Sarpy County and really hope to be a partner in the implementation as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, if you just look at what we're doing with Connect Sarpy and changing 192nd into a major arterial road, and its geographic location somewhat in between 370 and the Flying J truck stop exit out there, Highway 31. It makes a lot of sense. So look forward to getting this transitioned over to the federal guys down at the state to work all the environmental and pushing this thing as hard as we can.
Yep.
Thank you.
I hear what you're saying, Don. I don't see any concern about additional, if there'd be 20 years down the road, 40 years down the road, because the way they do this is amazing. I mean, they've got all of the flow of traffic. You put another spot on the map down at Flug, and if there's a connecting 4-lane that gets there, that skews some numbers on some other areas. That's why they needed to be careful on the initial planning, looking at what we have now, not what may be down the road. So
yeah. But the lake is a very good point. I mean, that was something where I read that press release right after we went into the screening process, and I thought, oh boy, we're going to have to answer this, not probably now, but definitely in the future. And so as that project gets refined and we figure out about the timing of the development and everything, it'll definitely impact both our land use scenario and our traffic forecasts.
So we, Mike, we put David Klug on the map of staff because he's a bulldog. So just watch out.
I heard that yesterday.
You better watch out because he's coming down there. Make things happen, right, David?
yeah, David's excited. He's been to 3 meetings in the last week or whatever it's been. And I said, welcome to my last few years. A few years seemed like a lifetime.
Yeah.
So, but enjoyed it. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
Item 8.1 is litigation, executive session.
For the protection of the public interest, I move that we go into executive session to discuss litigation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and just to let the people in the gallery know, the board is going to exit the room for executive sessions this year, so we don't actually need to exit the boardroom. The board members will go into the other room for executive session. Please vote.
Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
What is it? 3? It is now 4:17 p.m. At 3:51, we went into executive session where our discussion was restricted to litigation. I need a motion that we return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Klug, second by Commissioner Warren to return to regular session. Please vote.
Give me 1 second here. Okay. Ayes 4, absent Mixon.
All agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Commissioners is adjourned.